How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt, that is Shawn, and welcome to our show. Shawn, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about 4 things people say about selling a house that just aren't true. Condos are on the rise. Not only condos, but car condos specifically are on the rise. And we're going to be talking about a Massachusetts landlord who has a special gift for their tenant.
Pretty cool.
First of all, happy National Pink Tie Day. Shawn and I are both wearing pink ties. You know, it's not National Pink Tie Day, but have you noticed that like every single day it's like National Cookie Day, National Couples Day? Who is coming up with these days and how can we get in on it?
I have no idea, but the funny thing is my daughter and I were searching the internet a couple of weeks ago for different days. I'm like, oh, I wonder when National Pizza Day is. I wonder when National Hot Dog Day is. So pick a food, Google it, there's a day for it. I guarantee it.
National Hot Dog Day, National Daughter Day. Those exist.
Yeah.
So maybe
National Pink Tie Day.
Maybe
this was not planned, but that's how we think.
All right, let's start with an article from Realtor.com entitled 4 Things People Say About Selling a Home Today That Just Aren't True. Number 1, you don't need to renovate. Buyers will take anything. Now, Shawn, I think there's, with these extreme statements, there's always some truth to it. So when it comes to renovations and buyers will take anything, I don't think that's true. But renovate, I think, is different than upgrade, because if you upgrade a few light fixtures and change out your carpets to hardwood floors, is that an upgrade or are you renovating? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think renovate is just a harsh term. You need to update, and I would say 9 times or maybe even 9.5 times out of 10, you're going to have to do something to that house, and it's usually painting is, come on, please, it's a must. Every time. I would paint my own house before I sold it. I was looking at a place today. I was supposed to go see these people. Looked at their pictures online, and they have a red paint, like painted walls, red, like bright red. Wallpaper on their walls. This is a currently active listing, and they were kind of unhappy or something, whatever. But there's already red flags in there. Right? You've got red walls, you've got wallpaper on your walls. No one wants it. Nobody wants your red wall and nobody wants your wallpaper. So what does that say? You didn't take the time, or you didn't listen to somebody to do the things that you needed to do to sell this property. And then you're going to overprice it. So there's red flags when I look at places that I'm like, all right, they're not going to listen. Maybe they didn't get the advice, or maybe they're just not listening. And so if I was to take that listing, I would say you need to paint it, because it's way too harsh, and the buyer is going to think that they have to put $5,000-$7,000 into this. They don't want to have to do that, right? So you need to paint. Look at your fixtures. If you've got the old 90s gray gold ones, granted, brushed gold is coming back. It's really back, but like the old ones are old, right? So get rid of them and update those fixtures. And then carpets. Carpet isn't expensive. If you have carpet in your bedrooms and it's a little bit discolored, it's pretty cheap. I would say that if you're selling a house, try to think of investing about $3,000 to $7,000 into that house. Honestly, if it's a decent sized house, to get it up to where you want that quality to be. Because if you're trying to get top dollar, the buyer does not want to do that. And yes, in a hot market like we've seen, buyers are going to crawl all over this, but just think if you would have put $5,000 to $7,000 in it, how much more they'd be crawling, how many more would be crawling. You're going to get the investment out, and I'm going to tell you that you need to paint, and if you don't want to, then you're going to sit on the market, and I don't know if that listing's for me, because I'm the preparer, right? We're going to tell them prepare, and then price it right.
Yeah, and it might be concerning if your real estate agent doesn't recommend you upgrade, doesn't recommend you do these very small minor renovations. For me and Shawn, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first 3 things that we look at are paint, flooring, and light fixtures. These are the things that catch buyers' attention, and if you're going to spend $5,000, please do it, because that $5,000 is opposed to you being on the market and dropping $20,000 and having to pay those holding costs as well for that property.
Absolutely, and I'll give you one quick example of the 1% or the 5% of a listing I went on today, this morning, just got back, past clients of mine, man, are they meticulous. I mean, I couldn't have done this house. Wait till you guys see this house. The pictures, it'll come out in the next 3 weeks. They are so meticulous. They know what to do. Their house looks like a model. And that's the one time that you don't have to tell them to do anything. I was like, please don't do anything. We're ready for pictures. Let's just get it done, right? So very few does that happen.
Loudoun County. Kevin LaRue is going to be jealous.
Yeah, he is. You wait, Kevin.
Number 2, you can price your house sky high and get that amount. You know, this goes without saying, but maybe it's in here for a reason. I mean, we all hear the stories. It's the hottest real estate market since, you know, who knows when, and prices are through the roof. But, you know, you can't fool the market. So, Shawn, what are your thoughts on using that listing price as a marketing tool?
Absolutely, you can't fool the market. And, you know, there's 2 ways of going about this. Right now, in a hot market, the worst thing you want to do is overprice it. But there are scenarios like, you know, in some instances where you are going to be pretty aggressive on that price, and you're going to use the ammunition that you have to try to get that price, right? But first off, you know, letting the market take it sometimes when you know the market's hot and you're going to get, that's probably the best way to do it. If you overprice it or price it slightly too high, you're not going to get the good contracts. The contracts aren't going to be escalating like you expected, and they're probably not going to be waiving certain things, right? So our goal is always to get the best contract, and so you use that as your strategy of pricing. If you're pricing too high, you're going to get 1, maybe 2 contracts, if that, right? Or you're going to sit on the market, you're going to have to come down, and then if you would have just priced it in the beginning where you wanted to, or where you should have, you would have gotten more. However, you know, sometimes it's okay to push that price, and you just better have your ammunition on why you're priced there, right? And so certain clients have done so much to their properties, and you can tell the difference between, you know, this property that just sold and theirs, and it's because they have spent so much money to get it so meticulous, right? There, I would say, all right, I feel comfortable trying this, and I think we can get it because I have so much to talk about. I can tell you about every upgrade in this house, and it's worth it, right?
Yeah, you really have to have, as the article says, Ruthie Asseline from Compass in New York City and Miami. By the way, love that you can be licensed in New York City and Miami, 2 really cool places to be selling properties. Maybe we should look into our Florida real estate license. But anyway, she says you really have to have the creme de la creme if you're going to just throw up a ridiculous price. You really have to have, you know, that oomph to back it up.
Yeah, for sure.
Number 3, sellers don't need to market their listings much. It will sell. Well, Shawn.
Wow.
Where to even begin?
Oh, throwing it up on the MLS, right? I mean, yeah, anybody can throw it up on the MLS. I was talking to people the other day. It's like anybody can take pictures, right? I mean, I think our last thing and throw it up on the MLS. But marketing is key. I mean, we are all about marketing. I think we do more than most people, and it works. And, you know, I'm not just taking pictures. We're not just taking pictures. We're sending postcards, we're doing online pushing, we're doing videos, we're doing 3D tours. I mean, this stuff works. It's part of our game plan every time. And I mean, you're going to get a lot more juicy biters on those things when you do that.
Yeah, you really want to create that buzz.
It's all about creating a buzz. And that's what I tell my clients. Listen, that first weekend is so key. And so that's why we do all this up front, and we push, and to get as many people in there talking about it as possible. That's going to yield you your highest price.
The article mentioned that you know, she saw a $10 million listing, one of the real estate agents quoted, and there weren't professional photos. Mm-hmm. So definitely as a baseline, professional video, floor plans, 3D tours. I'm a big fan of floor plans.
Yeah, you actually got me into the floor plans, and honestly, I do it every time now because it's so important. Yeah, it's very important.
Number 4, in a bidding war, it's a no-brainer just to pick the highest offer. Shawn, we've covered this maybe many times. The highest price is not always the best offer. There could be financing contingencies. There could be home inspections. There could be some shaky things in the contract. So highest price, not always the best offer.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had where the highest price was the worst offer. If you have to look at the details, and the number one thing is finance and appraisal contingencies, home inspection contingencies. If they're gone, then that's a much more solid contract than just a high price. So that's why you need a professional to look at these things to make sure that you're getting the best deal and that it's going to close. Anybody can throw a high price. There's been times when people just say, just write in your price. Just write in your price. No, you write in your price. You put your top end in. There are some that just say unlimited. I've heard of this, right? All right, well, unlimited, are you waiving everything? Because you could be paying, if that's the case, okay, I'll take it.
All right, well, let's move on to the second topic. This comes to us from MiamiHerald.com. It's actually about the New York City market, and the article is entitled Pricey Car Condos, Our Latest Real Estate Rage. New vehicle registrations in Manhattan jumped 27% in 2020, and that has increased demand for parking. When I saw that they said new registration has jumped, I'm thinking people that living in Manhattan are leaving Manhattan, but there is a new development. It's a garage that's been converted into a condominium, but instead of apartments, it's selling 23 parking spaces, and they are being marketed for sale to the public for as much as $350,000 each. So
amazing.
The car, the car lifestyle is not dead, and when you're in New York City, the cost of Ubering, the situation that is the subway system, cars not necessarily a bad bit when it comes to living in New York City. What are your thoughts on? But 350. I mean, how much would you pay for a parking spot in New York City? Well, the thing is, in DC, parking spots are what, $100,000, maybe $150.
It depends on the building, right? It depends on the condo.
So here, $350 is not unheard of.
$350 for New York. I mean, they're going to pay it, right? I mean, if you go to the Waterview or whatever it's called, I can't think.
Watergate.
No, right here in Rosslyn.
In Rosslyn, yeah.
Blue building, can't think of the name.
Turnberry
Tower. I mean, they're at least $50,000 in there. I sold one in Gaslight Square for $50,000.
Yeah. So I mean, $50,000 in Rosslyn.
That's in Arlington. Yeah. So in New York City, I mean, there's going to be plenty of people that are going to pay this.
Rosslyn, aka Mini Manhattan.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you heard that before?
No, I haven't.
Oh, shit.
That's good.
People are trying to make it happen, but Manhattan on the river, I don't know if it's happening
gonna take
or not.
A while. But yeah, I mean, like the thing is, what's happening now is COVID on steroids again, right? So like we're seeing the effects of it, right? And a lot of people are like, I don't want to take public transportation anymore because of the fear of getting this disease, whatever. So that has changed. Not only has it changed people's perception of where they want to live, how they want to live, but also what they're driving and how they're getting to work. And so all of these parking spots now are at a premium, and what a great idea. I think this is really cool. I've never personally seen a car condo before. I've heard of garages like that were attached where they'll have like lifts up, and I'm assuming that's what this is. But I think it's awesome, and there's going to be people paying for this, no doubt.
Yeah, the article says it's the closest thing to having a front a driveway, like a front driveway in Manhattan. And
could you imagine that?
What are your transportation options in further than walking distance in Manhattan? What you got the bus, you got an Uber, and you got the subway. And Shawn, you've taken the subway in New York City.
I have.
It's an adventure. Like there's an
good.
Instagram account literally called Subway Creatures of New York City.
Oh my God.
It is a treacherous event. I mean, there's like music going on. There's people eating. It's a disaster.
And not only that, the subway system is really old. I mean, it's kind of like, they're constantly updating it, but it's been probably 2 years since I've been there. But it's rickety and it's old, and there's characters in there, and you hear of all this crazy stuff going on in there. And, if you're more of a high-profile person that has the money, you don't want to take the subway, right?
Does anyone wake up and say, like, yes, I'm looking forward to taking the New York City subway today? I think the best...
tourists, that's it, right?
Yeah, the best subway system I've been on is in Tokyo, in Japan. It was clean, it ran on time, people were respectful. In the subway, you don't talk. Like, you don't talk in the car. There's no one playing music, there's no one eating. You can, talk quietly and whatnot, but number one thing, people are respectful of other people's space.
Absolutely, and that was the same way in London. London was very clean. Tokyo was the cleanest. I rode the subway systems and the bullet train from different cities, it was the cleanest, most impeccably kept place, and I wish that we were up to that standard, but we're not. So yeah.
So getting back to the article, these are only I think I had it 23 parking spots. So it's not like this 100 unit or 200 unit, like it's not essentially a ton of parking spots. But what's interesting is in Arlington and throughout, I would say a lot of metro areas, developers and city councils are trying to figure out how they can lower the amount of parking spots per building. So you see with the new buildings, it's 0.6 parking spots per unit, or 0.8 or 0.5. I'm not sure, don't quote me on what it is exactly, but now you're almost seeing not the opposite, but you are seeing some demand, and I think you have to be affiliated with this building that it's in, or you have to maybe own a condo or maybe own in this development. You can't just be on the Upper East Side and then decide to purchase this random in some random garage. But I did find the juxtaposition of developers wanting to limit garage space, because it is expensive too to build out a garage versus the private parking.
But that's another thing that we were talking about last week, is just being inventive about what you're creating. Maybe it's a space that they couldn't do anything else, and they're like, all right, what do we do with this? We own this land and we have to do something. We own this building. Let's convert it into a car condo, because you can't make condos out of something the size of a car. Maybe in New York you can, after that thing you just showed me.
Yeah, and that'll open it up to maybe buyers that are like, where am I going to put my car?
Yeah, I mean,
if you're going to pay a couple $1 million in New York City, what's another 200?
You're going to want a Ferrari. You're going to want that
yeah.
car, right? So they're going to pay for the space so they can get the car, for sure.
Interesting. 23. I wonder how the sales are going. It's being done by Kristen Jordan of Douglas Elliman, who's actually on $1 Million Listing New York. Yep. So, all right, let's move on to our third topic, kind of a feel-good story out of Massachusetts. This comes to us from news.com.au. We've taken a few stories from the Australian media. I'm not sure where this is syndicating from, but we're getting it from the Australian news. So, Massachusetts landlord gives rental tenant $3,400 Australian, which is basically $2,500 from house sale. So, landlord gives $2,500 to the tenant for the sale of the house. Basically, the shtick here is landlord was a landlord for a long time, house appreciated in value, sold the house, made a hefty profit, and then tracked down former tenants and said, hey, listen, I was only trying to cover my mortgage, I was only trying to cover my utilities, expenses, taxes of being a landlord. Everything else is kind of just gravy. So here is part of the proceeds. Ended up being $2,500, which I'm not sure what the rent was, but in a lot of different places, and even where we live, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. What an amazing idea. What an amazing story. And I've never heard of this. And you think about the people. So I've owned rental properties, and those people lived in my place, and they helped me pay my mortgage, right? They paid it down for me, basically. And this guy was like, hey, I want to give you guys money, my tenants. And it wasn't just one tenant, it was multiple tenants. And he had this whole formula of how he was going to pay them. It's like, all right, you lived in here X years, it appreciated 20% or 40% or whatever it was. And so I created this calculation, and this is what each tenant's going to get based on how long they lived there and how much they paid down my mortgage. I mean, who even thinks that way? That's such a great story, great outcome. I wouldn't have thought of it.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of, and maybe this is because I just spend too much time on the internet, but I'm like, is this real? Is this fake? Is this some sort of viral stunt?
Good, yeah.
And maybe I'm just jaded in that way, but what the letter does say, and this is what got my ears ringing of okay, are we sure about this, is I firmly believe, is the landlord is saying after the principal of my mortgage is paid, I firmly believe that the capitalist tradition of retaining that money after the sale of the property is exploitative and antithetical to a just society. So he's basically, the landlord's basically saying, look, he almost to the extent that housing is a human right, and not necessarily some sort of financial thing going on. So don't really want to go down that
it doesn't
path,
believe in capitalism or like that kind of thing.
But there is a growing number of people on the internet that are angry at landlords, like, you landlord, you're gouging me, like, this is my right to live here. And when everything was happening with the eviction moratorium, and I guess it's still happening, and hey, I can't pay my rent, this is BS, I shouldn't be allowed to pay. What about the landlord? What about the mom and dad who have bills to pay, and that's their only source of income, and their property taxes are going up and they're not getting any rent money? What about that?
I mean, that's exactly what I always think, and I have a lot of clients like that get stuck. It's like, hey, I need this money to pay the mortgage so that I don't default on this loan. So you're helping one person, but you're destroying another, right? And so does that actually help? And my thought was, hey, listen, some people are going to take advantage of this situation, right? There's renters out there that will take advantage of this. And did you have to show proof of, for this moratorium? Like, did you have to show proof that you were not making as much money? Because in my opinion, you would have to, if you were renting from me, and you would have to show me that you weren't making as much money. And then you're not just going to not pay me. If you're still making some money, all right, was this percentage of your salary, right? Say you're paying 20% of your salary towards rent. All right, well, whatever you're making now, you're still going to pay me 20% because I have to pay my bills, right? So it shouldn't have been just like, I'm not paying rent because I can't afford it anymore, And I think that a lot of people got taken advantage of in that instance, and it's just not fair. It's not a fair thing at any respect of the game. So is that seller now that had to default on the loan, now their credit's shot, or maybe they get some sort of government credit on their taxes because of this. They should, something should happen. I mean, I guess they would in a loss of their rental, they would be able to claim that. But still, it's like, you're putting a lot of people in a bad position. Yeah,
and as I've gotten older, I've realized that landlords are just normal people just trying to get by. Sure, you're going to have the scrupulous landlords, the unethical people. You're going to have that in any sort of situation. But my first landlord I had, I would say I was, lukewarm with him. I wasn't difficult, but I wasn't completely like on my best behavior all the time. Then my next landlord, he was a little kind of off the walls, and now my current landlord, dude, I'm updating light bulbs, like I'm making improvements to the place. I'm making myself, it's not like wasted money because I'm making myself feel happy. I got a great relationship with him. He called me during the pandemic. He's like, hey, I want to lower your rents, like something like $1,000. I was like, dude, do not do that. Like, I'm okay. I appreciate the offer, but we have that communication, and so he's just a normal person. And by the way, I want to make it clear that I believe in home ownership, and I really want to buy a house, and I'm working very, very hard to the point where I can afford living and purchasing a mortgage. So this isn't me, selling Lexuses and pulling up, with a Honda Civic at the dealership, right? I'm not, selling something I don't believe in. I want to work so hard where I can be my own landlord. So when it comes to landlords, and I hope we didn't get away from the point here that this is an incredible feat, but what I also want to get across is that landlord, we should just call them owners. They're just normal people. They're trying to get by. They got a life. They got bills to pay. And, for the most part, if you're cool with them, they're going to be cool with you.
That's right. Like I said, I've been a landlord. Now there's the corporations that rent, and that might be a little bit different story where they've got a lot of cash in the background. But for the most part, they own one other place besides the place they're living in. Take me as an example. I owned a condo. My wife, my girlfriend at the time, but now wife, owned a condo. We moved in together and rented, and we rented out our 2 condos. So it's like, we didn't own 5, 7 places. We each owned a 1-bedroom condo. We were renting a 2-bedroom place, and we needed that money to be able to pay it. And that's probably 95% or 90% of the rentals that are out there are like that. Maybe I don't even know what the number is, but so that's who you're hurting. You're hurting that person. You're not hurting the big corporations. They've got the cash, right? They've got the reserves. But they've also got stockholders and everything else to answer to. But you're crushing the mom and pop shop.
Could you imagine for a second, you're this tenant, and I think what happened was the landlord reached out and said, hey, what's your address? A couple weeks later, check in the mail, $2,500.
So cool.
How would that make you feel?
Man, I'd be like,
that would restore your faith in humanity.
it really does. That's the thing is, it's a really good, feel-good story. Use this as a lesson that, there are good people out there. Matt is one of them. And
I don't know. I wish I was this guy's tenant a couple years ago.
yeah, I know, man. That would be
$2,500 richer.
Yeah.
Put it all in
It's
Bitcoin.
amazing. Right.
All right, guys. Well, there you have it. That just about wraps up another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. If you have any questions, comments, definitely drop them in the comment section below. Hit the thumbs up button if you haven't already. And until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care, guys.